Time to talk Buckeyes, and Buckeyes we will, and there is much to talk about here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you all stopping by. It's a Wednesday, and hey, it's our regular time. How about that? So 11 a.m. Eastern Time, Wednesday. That is typically the time to catch us. However, please subscribe, hit that bell for the notifications to know when we go live. Steve Hellwagon right next to me, a stalwart in all this that we do here at the Voice of College Football. 273 episodes. And guess what? Tony Gerdeman, Buckeye Huddle, Buckeye Weekly. You go back to episode number 1, he was here as well. So you guys have been right there with me and appreciate that. Kevin Noon standing by, Buckeye Huddle. We don't know if he'll be by, but Kevin, we appreciate all that you do as well. All right, Steve. Well, 3 more players in the fold. And not everyone can have a single digit next to their name in regards to their player ranking, their position ranking. Let's trust the coaches and the evaluators. Let's start with one Zion Grady. Now, his numbers are pretty high up the list as a top 75 player. Edge rusher out of the state of Alabama.
Yeah, tremendous prospect. And obviously it's the second guy from Alabama they have in this class, along with Naeem Offord, the outstanding defensive back. And I don't know the last time they took somebody from Alabama. I don't even know who it would even be. And to have 2 guys in this class and a possible third as well that could also end up at Ohio State. We can get into that here in a little bit as well after we talk about the commitments. But Zion Grady, I believe 6'4", 235 defensive end, will probably be in that 250 to 260 range by the time he enrolls at Ohio State a year from now. And again, another national top 100 player in this class, was in for his official visit and loved what he saw. Enjoyed spending the time with Larry Johnson, the defensive line coach, and he is going to sign with the Buckeyes in December, it seems like. And, it just, again, it just speaks to what Ohio State's building, to add another piece at a critical key position like defensive end. And, Zion Grady, everybody in the country wanted him, and Ohio State's going to end up landing him. It's pretty impressive stuff.
Folks, as soon as these commits came down, I recognized that Buckeye Weekly was hot on the trail, immediately live. So please, again, Buckeye Weekly with Tony and the crew over there tracking these commits. And I got to say, Tony, as soon as Steve said something about, wonder when the last time the Buckeyes signed I always think of you. Where's the database? Does Tony have a list for this? I'm sure it's in the archive somewhere.
No, and this is something we've talked about in the past on Buckeye Huddle or Buckeye Weekly. And I don't have the answer right offhand. I can give you Louisiana. We can talk about Nader Abdallah in 2003 or whatever. But Alabama,
Arkansas with KJ Hill was from North Little Rock or something.
Mm-hmm. But Alabama is. And I think the key there is similar to what Ohio State was able to do in 2017 in Texas, when all of the Texas schools were fluctuating and in a flux, and you go in there and you steal some guys. Alabama right now, you lose Nick Saban, everybody's going to go in there and try to poach the top players, because now is the only time you can really do it. And until Kalen DeBoer gets things righted and gets these relationships going. And there's a ton of players in Alabama. Alabama is one of the top states in terms of producing talent. They've got 4-star guys, like the top 25, 30 guys in their class are all like 4-star guys in terms of the state of Alabama. There's a ton of talent there. And if Ohio State can go in there and get Naeem Offord, keep Zion Grady, and they're continuing to get in there. But Grady is a guy who is plays, I think, some defensive end in a 3-4, which he won't have to do in Ohio State's defense. But he's an edge rusher. He's powerful. He's a position of need for Ohio State because they've missed their numbers for a while now. And really, the way they want to rotate guys, you can't have enough defensive ends, and especially when you don't know if all of the defensive ends you've got are going to hit. So you've got to continue to bring these guys in. And right now they've got to look – it's looking like a pretty decent class. and they're still recruiting guys. But it's a surprise in that, a year ago at this time, I don't think any of us, when was the last time we talked about Ohio State going after players in Alabama? And if we did talk about it, it wasn't in anything like, it wasn't serious conversation because you knew it wasn't going to happen. Now, like, you can talk about Grady, you can talk about Malik Autry, another guy. We can talk about Naeem Alford, and Ohio State has very legitimate. They've got 2 commits from 2 of those guys, and so they've got a very legitimate shot at landing both of them. Ultimately, it's just a really interesting time in the state when you've got Hugh Freeze in his second year, Kalen DeBoer in his first year, and everybody's trying to get into the state to get what they can and get out.
Stats on one Zion Grady: 106 total tackles this past season, 35 tackles for loss, 19 sacks, 26 quarterback hurries. He was one productive and busy guy in the opponent's backfield.
Yeah, in 3 years, 39 sacks is what our database shows for him. 39 sacks in 3 years. So that's pretty productive. And as you said, 19 this past year, and probably he'll push for 20 or more, going into a senior year, depending on how many games he gets to play and all that. So, yeah, it really is something to see.
Tony, the tight end from Mansfield that we discussed a couple weeks ago, and I got to admit, for as many times as I've heard his name, I don't want to botch his first name because I don't recall how to pronounce it, but Mr. Miller out of Mansfield, let's start the conversation on him.
Yeah, and he's definitely going to be a receiver. Bodpen Miller, 6'4", like 190 or so, plays quarterback at his Ontario high school. So that's one of the reasons why he's very under the radar, and he's going to play quarterback again this season as a senior. But an athlete, threw for 2,000 yards, rushed for I think 1,003 yards last year as a junior. And if you go look at his huddle highlights after the show, you'll see a guy who is quicker than the 6'4" would have you think. Like, he can get in and out of his cuts, and he makes guys miss. But he went to camp, worked out. I was there when Brian Hartline had a group of Miller and maybe 4 or 5 others, and was really putting them through their paces, and he was watching them closely. And then they had him run a 40, and then it came back a few days later for a 7-on-7, I think. But I believe he ran a 4.44 in the 40-yard dash. He's legit 6'4". He's not played receiver, so this is not a guy that Brian Hartline normally goes after, and you don't normally go after guys like this early. If you're Ohio State, you're putting an offer out there for an Ohio guy, so you have to be willing to get the commitment. You have to be willing to take the commitment. This is more of sometimes we might see this after your senior season, but now after your senior season, you're already signed with another program, so you kind of have to, I guess, act quickly. I think it's also a statement of the guys that they're not going to get. I don't think you can say the two are unrelated. Yes, they really liked what they saw from Bodpen Miller, but if you had your top 3 or 4 targets wanted to commit right now, there wouldn't be room for them. So I think the two are very committed, but also an intriguing prospect to Brian Hartline's going to have to teach to be a wide receiver, and that's not something he's normally had to do, not since maybe his first year when he was dealing with some of the former running backs that Urban Meyer would recruit. So generally Hartline just goes and gets receivers. Here's a quarterback that he's going to have to turn into a receiver, but one that physically has the traits to do so.
Yeah, I have no problem with this. Brian Hartline worked out Miller at the Ohio State. I guess he was there for 7-on-7, maybe for a camp day as well. You were there last week, Tony, when all that was going down, so you know more about it, exactly what the hands-on was with Brian Hartline, if he took him aside and worked him out, or what the deal was. But they knew full well what this kid is capable of as an athlete. I've seen a basketball highlight where he glides in and dunks the ball. So looks like he is a tremendous athlete, and a guy that, they're banking on his best football being, 2, 3, 4 years down the line, and teaching him the wide receiver position and that kind of thing. And just a natural athlete, born in Ethiopia, as I understand it. Mm-hmm. And not sure if, that's the first player I've ever heard of that's ever, come from being born in Ethiopia. I don't recall the situation with Ashton Yabodi, if maybe he was born in Africa or his parents moved over from Africa or whatever that was. But it's been very rare, obviously, to have a football player with those ties back to Africa. So that the continent of Africa. So it is very, very much a neat thing, I think, for him to be part of this culture and be part of this class. And Ontario is, again, kind of the same general area as Lexington, where Cade Stover came from, up in Mansfield area, and play that type of competition, probably Division II, Division III in terms of Ohio high schools. Not the biggest, but certainly not the smallest. And I'm interested to see what this senior year holds for him. And definitely, the future looks bright. This is a guy that you're banking on probably in his third, fourth, fifth year of college, maybe developing into being a frontline guy. So kind of a developmental guy, and I have no issue with it.
It's just to be able to get a guy that is willing to stick around and get developed, I think is you need those guys in a program just to remind people like, hey, you don't have to leave after your first year if things aren't going your way. You don't have to leave after your second year. You are allowed to stay, at least until the coaches tell you to leave.
Hopefully we've seen how the season played out with the Ontario offense, where you've got this type of an athlete, and I understand playing some quarterback. He had 14 carries. If the stats I'm looking at are accurate, he threw 23 passes, completed 14. He had 14 carries. He didn't handle the ball too much. Again, I'm going with the Max Preps statistics, and maybe it's
no, you can't do that. That's not a full season for a starting quarterback.
His stats,
yeah, they don't report all those games on Max Preps, unfortunately.
Huddle, I think his stats are on his Huddle page, or at least his Huddle video, where like the first frame you'll see is the stats. But yeah, like over 2,000 yards passing, over 1,000 yards rushing as a junior. So he was their weapon. When Ted Ginn would do this, when you have your best player, you put him at quarterback. Ted Ginn played quarterback. Like we saw Christian Bryant do some of that. Even Demarion Witten has done some of that. So it's just, you've got that kind of athlete. Yeah, 2,328 yards passing, 19 touchdowns last year, and 1,003 yards rushing. So a guy that, to your point, Mark, has handled the football quite a bit, just not in the way that Ohio State intends him to do it, unless they want to, come up with some trick plays. But he will be working in the offseason on becoming a receiver more and more. I think you'll see that. And as we talked to him after one of the camps, he said, he expects to play quarterback, but they might throw some stuff his way as well at receiver next year, this coming year, just because.
Well, Steve, somebody's going to be the lowest ranked player in the number one ranked class in the country, but Jake Cook a little closer to home for you too.
If I could just throw back just a second, I looked up Ontario on joeitel.com. They're a Division III team. The team was 10-2 this past year. So he was, and my goodness, the scores, they put up 35, 38, 56, 45, 59, 45, 34, 31. They lost to Tiffin Columbian in the second round of the playoffs, ended up 10-2. So they play a lot of Division III and IV competition, some Division II competition as well. So play a representative schedule, it looks like, for their size school, and excited to see what Bod Penn Miller will do in his senior year. So I just wanted to throw that in there just for clarification's sake on him. Jake Cook, you were getting ready to flip me up on Jake Cook here, and I like Jake Cook a lot. First saw him at the camp either a year ago or 2 years ago, and he was a very intriguing guy. When you first saw him, he had a unique body type, and you're like, man, if this kid really, really gets, his body, where it needs to be. I wouldn't say he was, fat or out of shape or anything like that. I just think he needed to be toned up just a little bit. It was obvious he had the want to and the desire, and he's a very earnest kid and willing to learn and willing to work. And I don't care what his ranking is. I'm buying stock in Jake Cook. I believe in him, and he's a guy that I think in 4 or 5 years we're going to look up and say that was a good take. All those years ago when he was a Louisville commitment and Justin Fry brought him in to work extra kind of behind the scenes, and they didn't immediately offer him that day. They waited till they got all 5 of the camp days done. And then like a week after the individual workout is when they came back and offered Jake Cook. He came in for an official visit, basically committed on the spot. And I have no qualms with this. He is an interior offensive lineman all the way. And I think he will pay big dividends, kind of like Bodpin Miller in his 3rd, 4th, 5th college year in a few years. So just put him on the back burner, let him simmer, let him cook, and in a couple years he'll be ready to help you win some games, I think.
Former Mr. Relevance in Ohio State recruiting classes would include DeJuan Jones back in 2019 as the lowest ranked guy. I think that. Pat Elfline maybe as well, way back in 2012.
Good
one
comparison.
Of those guys. There's a history of it, but there's also a history of those guys not working out in terms of the last guy. Just wanted to throw a couple names out there. And again, these camp offers, I think, always carry a little bit more weight because this is coaches are looking at them. This isn't film. This is them 5 feet away, challenging them. Guys are competing for offers, then they're competing against other guys who are competing for those offers. They're going against defensive linemen who are competing for offers. So it's a different kind of environment, and coaches get to see a lot of the reactions and how they handle things. And as Steve said, they also get to see them. What did you do in the off season? What have you done in the year since we saw you last at camp, or what have you done since we saw you December at a football game? And a lot of times these are completely different players when they get there. And that's more of the stuff that the coaches want to see.
Questions and comments are welcome, folks. We appreciate the Super Chat contributions as well. Keep in mind, we got 2 experts here, typically 3, and maybe a third of one here. And these guys know their stuff and deliver and have for 5 to 6 years for us each and every week. So we so much appreciate Tony, Steve, Kevin. So again, consider the Super Chat contribution. We'll take your comments and questions. I'll take one name that was mentioned and allow you guys to either attack that one or freelance into the world of targets for the Buckeyes. Jordan Davison's a running back out of Santa Ana in the famous modern-day high school that produces so much talent down through the ages. He's the number 6 running back according to the composite. And he's an Ohio State crystal ball at this point, whoever wants to take him on. And again, wherever you guys want to take what the landscape looks like right now for who may fall next.
I can just say I'm not 100% sure what's going on with Jordan Davison. I think he's trying to juggle several top schools right now and trying to figure out exactly where he wants to go. I think Michigan might be on that list. I think that, again, Ohio State has a couple of running backs already in the class with Bo Jackson and Isaiah West. Davison would be similarly ranked to West. West is number 214 nationally. Davison is number 199. And 6 foot, 216 pounds, according to what I'm looking at here. And was just in for his official visit this past week, has visited Michigan and Alabama previously, and he's just a big, powerful back and would be a 3rd running back in this class, which they could use some help there, obviously, because I think Henderson's obviously done after the upcoming season, and it seems like Quinshon Judkins will probably go to the NFL as well. You've got James Peoples and Sam Williams-Dixon, who are true freshmen on the team this year. The walk-on TC Caffey is there, and then the 2 guys already committed. That's 4 scholarship backs right now for next year as they sit there. So if we figure that Judkins will not be back. So, Davison to me would be a good addition to the class, but again, I'm not 100% sure where things are headed. We can talk about a couple other guys. I don't know if Tony had something else to offer on Davison or not.
Well, I think the thing to keep in mind with Davison is he still took his Ohio State visit, so that shows there's interest. But you go there and you're going to need to be explained what is the benefit of me joining a class and being the third running back. And the other thing to keep in mind is Ohio State accepted Isaiah West's commitment, knowing it might push them out of the Jordan Davison recruitment. So that was something that they did willingly. So if they don't end up with Davison, it feels like they were okay as long as they got West out of the deal. Whereas maybe they don't accept the commitment from West and go all in on Davison. Maybe that doesn't work out, or maybe it does. But they were comfortable taking West, knowing that it would impact this. So I think that's something to keep in mind there. And I still think that you don't need 3 running backs in this class. You can go get a transfer portal running back after the year. And we know they want generally 5 scholarship running backs. You've got 2 in James Peoples and Sam Williams-Dixon. You got 2 in Bo Jackson and Isaiah West for next year. And then go get somebody out of the portal who is experienced, possibly another Quinshon Judkins type, or perhaps even Quinshon Judkins himself. And the NIL could play a factor here. Being a first-round pick for a running back is pretty hard. Second-round pick last year, I'm just looking in the 2023, like the number 45 pick in the draft made like $1.5 million. And is that, would a guy like Quinshon Judkins stay for $2 million? Is that something you would want to do? Is it something you would need to do with perhaps a new starting quarterback? You want him to have some sort of a comfort level, or you're still a little concerned about the young guys? I think that is something to keep in mind, but also the guy that running backs want to get to the league as quickly as possible because they know they have a shorter shelf life. But, if you can make $1 million in college, do you want to do that? Or are you just sick of school at that point as well? Even if it's all online, it's still school. But I think you can go get a portal guy next year and be very, very happy with that.
I know everyone is all hot and bothered about a couple other guys, and one of them is Malik Autry, big-time defensive tackle out of Alabama, would be a third signee from Alabama. I think Opelika, Alabama, I think. And Bill Kurlick on our site was reporting that Zion Grady was trying to recruit Malik Autry away from Auburn to join this Ohio State class, and he was also in for a visit this past weekend. Ohio State had 45 players in for official visits during the month of June, currently with 19 commitments, and probably going to end up signing 23 to 26 players in that realm in this 2025 class. And, of course, the other guy that they just had in that everyone's all agog about is David Sanders Jr., the big-time offensive lineman from North Carolina, I think the number 2 or number 3 overall player in the country. And for Justin Fry, I don't want to say that his career as Ohio State offensive line coach hinges on signing David Sanders Jr., but boy, oh boy, it would really help his cause if he was able to land a player of that caliber in this 2025 class. And it's kind of between Ohio State and Tennessee for David Sanders Jr. You wonder about NIL inducements and everything when it comes down to both these guys, Autry and Sanders. And is Ohio State going to back up the Brinks truck to get both these guys? So, the salary cap is already rearing its ugly head in college football. Here we go.
I think one of the interesting things is for Justin Fry or for any assistant coach, you have to be a very, very good recruiter of 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds. Now you also have to be a very good salesman and recruiter for the collective, convincing them, if I can just get $2 million, if you can just give me $2 million, I can go get this guy. And so not only are you're recruiting on 2 fronts, and you have to be good at both fronts to be really, really good. And so, yeah, you're selling a kid who's 16, then you're selling a billionaire who is, 46, and you're like, look, this is all we just need a little bit more. And, what's it going to take for me to put you into this recruiting class is basically what the coaches are telling these the collective people in terms of, I need more money. Rattle the cup, put a couple quarters in there and rattle it, and see what kind of salesman you are, and maybe you might get your 6-star offensive lineman.
It's crazy. It's just nuts.
I don't have any data.
Everything that you've learned over hundreds of years of following college football, it's all out the window. You can now openly buy players, and it's a new frontier for sure.
It's not out the window. It's the window is open for everybody to see what has always been going on. And so now it's out there for everybody to see, and it's no longer the curtains are no longer pulled shut. Everything's out in the open for I didn't want to know how it was made. I just wanted the guy on the field.
That's it.
We also don't know everything that we've discussed to date, which is about 6 different players, how important these discussions are and these commitments and these signings. We knew that 5 years ago they were extremely important and were almost 100% guaranteed, not necessarily that the commitment would go through, but once the player signed that he was going to be an Ohio State player throughout, unless he did something to go off the rails. And now I don't know what that composition of what a recruiting class is going to look like against the average roster in terms of the percentage, but I do know that it's significantly dropped. And I don't have any compilation of data, but like you guys, I look at this stuff every day and look at different teams every day. And Ohio State is still foundationally one of the most homegrown teams in the nation, even though there's a lot of emphasis and a lot of attention given to the star players that they picked up through the portal. And maybe we're seeing the end of an era here with this collection of Ohio State players that are going to hit the field here in 2024 in regards to this being the final group of players that to this large extent, to that quality and that quantity that were committed and signed to this school and played a 3 or 4 year career.
Well, you're always going to the high school, right? The high school is always going to be where they get the bulk of their players. That's where they're going to do the bulk of their recruiting. That's the way they've got it set up. That's the way they want to continue it. And they're very adamant that you can't just go buy a national championship. You can't do it like Texas A&M did. And I know what I just said, Michigan fans are scoffing and laughing right now. You're talking about 2 or 3 players that they went into the portal that they had relationships with, not including Will Howard, who the quarterbacks are just completely out of this world in terms of moving around. But I think every year you look, maybe you add 30 players. Now, sometimes it's going to be 25 high school guys and 5 portal guys. Sometimes it's going to be 20 high school guys and 10 portal guys. I think you set the number at 30 to 32, and whatever you need, say you need some veteran linebackers, maybe that ups the number from 4 transfers to 8 or something like that, where you just fluctuate the need based on the youth that you have and the experience that you need, and you dial the high school recruiting down, you dial the portal recruiting up. But the other thing is there has to be guys in the portal. There are always guys in high school. You don't know if there are going to be guys that you need in the portal. They would have loved to have added an offensive lineman after spring. There weren't any. They were very fortunate that there was a year ago with Josh Simmons. If they went into last season, and there's no Josh Simmons and they need somebody, they're out of luck. So I think you're always going to go, and I know Ryan Day is always going to be focused on high school recruiting. And then the portal is the supplemental things that you fill in the cracks or you do something to put yourself over the top.
Here's a conversation that we've hit on in recent weeks, but I'm going to revisit it anyway, just because of a bit of research that I did this week to work on my own quarterback rankings. And so I looked at 8 different services from ESPN to CBS Sports and otherwise, 8 different services Carson Beck is the consensus number one quarterback. He was ranked the number one quarterback by all of these various sites. I don't believe that Carson Beck, unless he takes a substantial step up, is any kind of game-changing, game-breaking, generational type quarterback. I think he's really good and will make a ton of money in the NFL and maybe will position himself to be a top 5 or 10 pick. After that, you've got Quinn Ewers, Dylan Gabriel, Jalen Milroe, Noah Fafita, Jackson Dart. They seem to be the next guys in some type of order. And in terms of Will Howard, ESPN's got him at 13. Something called Sports Grid. I don't know their credibility. They've got him at 23. Athlon has Will Howard at number 20. Fifth Quarter College Football. Will Howard, I don't see him. 28 in the country. Greg McElroy does not have him in his top 10. The Sporting News has Will Howard at number 10. Fansided, Will Howard not in their top 10. Phil Steele has a couple different lists. Of course, he's got his 4 All-America teams. Mm-hmm. He's got his NFL draft prospect list, which lifts somebody like a Drew Aller to a number 4 position because that's how he's gathering information from NFL scouts. But then he also has, in addition to the NFL draft, just the All-America list, which is only going to be 4 deep. But I can't even find Will Howard. Where is he? He's in the 20s, I'm guessing. I'm not going to try to find. There he is. He's at number 13.
Yeah, on his draft list, he had him at number 13. And the thing on the Ohio State page, he's got him PS number 70. Is that and that's on this page here, the Ohio State page, where he lists out everybody on the team.
Is that his original recruiting ranking?
It is. And the other thing is Phil doesn't do the draft rankings. He lets somebody else do that. Yeah. So those aren't his draft rankings. Those are somebody else's that he uses. But yeah, the PS number, those are kind of like a composite ranking of recruits.
And the Ohio State quarterback room, according to Phil Steele, at 19.
Because I've seen them in the top 10 of other magazines and other rankings.
Yeah, I would think they would be.
I mean, it's a huge projection, but there is some proof of concept with Will Howard. But Will Howard in Ohio State's offense, I was on the radio show somewhere, and they're like, "What's the biggest question mark?" I'm like, until we see it from one of these quarterbacks in this offense, it's the quarterback, because it's the biggest question mark. It could be the biggest answer, and it's the most important position in sports. And so if you don't know exactly what you have, that's a concern. And Steve, I don't think Ryan Day did Ryan Day mention the quarterbacks when he was asked about his concern? I think he maybe just said, finding the guy or making it that guy. But I think it's a legitimate concern, because a year ago at this point, if somebody would have said, hey, Will Howard's going to be Ohio State's starting quarterback next year, you'd be like, who? Why? What? What terrible thing has happened that's the case?
Well, what we've lived through with Ryan Day for 4 years, 5 years, is people come out of the woodwork to criticize his handling of the quarterbacks. And, it's one, they haven't won it all on his watch, and, 2, they haven't won it all on his watch. So he, in their mind, he doesn't have the way he's handling it, he's mishandling it, is kind of their feeling if they don't win it all. What people don't like is they blow people out early in the season, and then they don't throw the ball into the 60th minute to prepare the next quarterback to be ready to go out there and play. And Day, he lets his starters run it up through the third quarter, and then basically puts the fourth quarter on ice. And so let's get out of here without any injuries or anything. And people translate that he's not developing the quarterback. Well, he has a lot of mouths to feed and a lot of masters to feed, and win the game convincingly. Although I think, given the slotting, of the seeds this year, they're going to kind of all fall into place based on your record and how you did. The champions will be 1 through 4. 1 and 2 loss teams will be 5 through 8, and 2 and 3 loss teams will be 9 through 12. And that's kind of how it's going to go. So it really doesn't matter how impressive you look. You're not impressing a committee anymore, other than you don't want to be 13. You want to be, at worst, you want to be 12. So, any rate, I think that it's gone so far that in my chat this week, one of our informed subscribers, you got to love these folks, are like, shouldn't they go into the season with an idea that against Akron, X is going to play the second half and let him develop, and then against whoever's next, Western Michigan, Y should play the second half and let him develop, and then against Marshall, Z should play the second half and let him develop. And it's kind of like, look, they're going to do what they think is the best thing to do at that exact moment in time based on who's done well in practice and who, I think what we saw in the spring game, and just based on the limited little bit that I know, Aaron Olin didn't play until the second half. And I don't think that was by mistake. I think that was by design. And yes, it did give Aaron Olin a lot of good snaps in the second half to grow and develop. But I think there was a reason for that. In the pecking order, it may not be the order of their talent, but at least on that given day, the pecking order based on the entire totality of what everybody had done in their time at Ohio State, he was number 5. So I think what you have to do is on the day that you play Toledo, the number 1 guy goes out, or not Toledo, Akron. The number 1 guy goes out and you put Akron away 28-3. Then the number 2 guy gets a little bit. The number 3 guy gets a little bit. And if there's one last series at the end, then maybe number 4 will play. But I don't think you can go into this with any kind of notion that we're going to win the game. We're going to win the game convincingly, and we're going to develop 2 other guys at the same time. It's just not going to work like that. It never has worked like that, and it never will. You want number 1 to be in a groove, and it's not to put up Heisman Trophy stats. It's not to impress voters or to impress committee. You don't need any of that impressive stuff anymore. Just win your games. Do what's best for the program. And I think that's what Ryan Day has showed me in 5 years. That's what he will do.
You don't need to start impressing people until you've got a loss or 2. And then that's when you got to start getting that stuff in there.
Stay out of the 12 or 13 hole. You can't be 12 because that group of 5 that's champion, that's like 17th, is going to jump over you to get the 12 spot. So you really got to be 11 or higher.
By the way, do you guys know the last time the 3rd string Ohio State quarterback threw at least 3 touchdown passes? Is one of my predictions in the daily thing that I'm doing. Is that a true freshman quarterback will throw at least 3 touchdown passes for Ohio State this year? And the last time that happened was 2011. But
Wow.
if it's going to happen for Julian Sayin, he has to kind of be the backup, because the last time a 3rd string quarterback did it, and we're talking about getting these quarterbacks all getting reps. Last time the 3rd string quarterback threw at least 3 touchdown passes for Ohio State was 1969. So really, you don't get past the backup quarterback when you're talking about throwing the ball. C.J. Stroud and Jack Miller were true freshmen in 2020. Neither one of them threw the ball, but they both ran it. Quinn Ewers, when he got to play as the 4th string quarterback in 2021, handed the ball off twice against Michigan State, and that was it. So it's rare that you're getting guys out there to get ready if they're not the backup. And as Urban Meyer would always say, like, once that backup is known, that guy needs reps. You can't have a competition anymore because the backup quarterback needs reps in practice in case the starter goes down. So once you've got your 2 guys, pretty much everybody else just almost stops existing, and they're working on scout team unless somebody gets a broken finger, and then you've got to move somebody up.
You make a perfect point there about the scout team too. You've got 3 guys with Nolan, Keenholz, and Sayin who are different, quarterback. I mean, Nolan is left-handed, correct? So,
yep.
I mean, if they're facing a left-handed quarterback that week, he's going to be the scout team quarterback. Just mark it down. He has to be. You've got to have somebody that's going to mimic what the other team's going to do. If they're a runner, a good thrower, you're going to Sayin and Keenholz, are going to maybe split time. I don't know, but I think you have to you use those guys to prepare your defense. They're going to be great scout team quarterbacks because they're pretty good quarterbacks in general, and they'll help prepare the defense. And hopefully we'll get some good comments from the defense as the season wears on. That, oh yeah, Julian, he's given us a great look. Oh yeah, Air, we love him. He on Tuesdays and Wednesdays are a bitch because this guy comes in and you never know what he's going to do. And he's exploited some stuff with our defense that, even the teams on Saturday don't do. That's what you want to hear as the season kind of goes on.
Tony, you're going to ruin Woody Hayes' legend. He had a third-string quarterback throw 3 touchdowns in one
Was it
game.
Dave Leggett?
No.
Who was it?
Over a season.
Oh, over the season.
Yeah.
Okay. Art Schlechter threw 4 touchdowns his freshman year as the starting quarterback in 1979 with 21 picks.
Yeah. Rex Kern threw 9, Kevin Rusnak threw 5, and Ron Majkowski threw 3 in 1969 as they shuffled through quarterbacks through injury and whatnot.
That's 17 touchdowns.
That, as I do the quick math, yes. So that might be a Woody Hayes record, honestly. I don't know, unless
better than Iowa, Rutgers, whoever else right now. The other dynamic in this is not a new discovery, but there's been all this anxiety every couple of years about a new starting quarterback that has no experience. C.J. Stroud, Justin Fields, Dwayne Haskins, J.T. Barrett, and things worked out just fine. Now we've got a guy, though. The different dynamic is this is the first transfer quarterback. So people have seen him play, and his blemishes and his weaknesses can be exposed and diagnosed. And it's almost like a pre-NFL draft syndrome of let's pick this guy apart. And I've done it as well, not pick him apart, but just questioned, can this team win a national championship? Which I may have made this comment on this show, but I made it on others, that I think Georgia's got the best roster in the country, 1 through 100, but I don't know that 1 through 100 matters. I think this is the best football team in America, like 1 through 20, 1 through 15, 1 through 20. I think there's more elite talent on this football team than anywhere else in the country. But can you win a national championship with the 15th best quarterback in the country?
Michigan did.
Has that happened since Jake Coker would be the last one that would come to mind that we would delve into the depths of past the top 10 quarterbacks in the country, somebody like that.
No, I don't know if top 15. I mean, let me know the defense that you've got. What kind of weapons do you have around you? I mean, I know people will diminish what Stetson Bennett did or I thought he was fantastic at Georgia. He made some really incredible plays and was a guy that you got tired of facing. And
that's why I didn't include him.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I think, JJ McCarthy, Michigan had to tried to hide him a little bit last year at times, but he was also a guy that made plays when they needed to be made. And he would be incredible evading the rush, keeping plays alive, making plays downfield. But, top 15, I think you can do that. But the thing is that sometimes you're a top 30, sometimes you're a top 1, that sort of thing where you're averaging in there. If Will Howard plays his best games against Ohio State's best competition, then I think they'll be fine. But it's rare to play your best games against the best defenses. So, that's one where just don't lose it and pick up some third downs with your feet. I think if you can just do that, as Jim Tressel would say, as long as you end every drive with a kick, you'll probably be okay. Now, Kirk Ferentz takes that a different way, and different kicks for different people. But Jim Tressel would just say, just no turnovers, and it'll work out okay.
And the big advantage for Will Howard, you just hit on, is he doesn't have to try to always fit a throw into a tight window. If he sees a little bit of a lane, then boom, I can pick up the 3rd and 5 myself. Mm-hmm. And that alleviates a lot of pressure as opposed to Kyle McCord looking around and thinking, I got to try to drill this in somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, it allows you to fix your errors or just raise your game. Like JT Barrett didn't have the best arm, was not the most accurate guy, but 3rd and 2, he would pick up the first down. I never saw him fall short, especially against Michigan. You never saw him come up short with those short yardage things. But you throw some passes and it's like, that wasn't very pretty. So if you can make up for it with your legs at some other point, all power to you. But I'm fascinated to see exactly how accurate Will Howard is as Ohio State's quarterback, assuming that he is. And as I've said many times on this show, still have no idea how well he throws the ball downfield. What are his deep throws like? Because he's never really had the receivers that I'll have now.
It seems to be a decent fit, just not the ideal fit for a wide receiver room that's probably the best in the country.
Oregon capitalized on having an incredible receiver room by going and getting Dylan Gabriel, and Ohio State finished short of that goal. And not that they were going to go get Dylan Gabriel, but I'm with you. The fit seems to be the dynamics of those two teams seem to side with Oregon right now.
Yakov, appreciate you being here as always. Will Ohio State analysts now double as assistant coaches?
I think some of them will. I think the senior ones who aspire to be on field coaches will. I don't think that you can inundate your practice field with coaches, though, and expect – I think there's a diminishing return at some point. I think that this is an area where your special teams should get some attention, obviously, because as they say, everybody cuts their teeth on special teams. And so some of these guys will be free to really sink their teeth into some of these special teams first and then, help out, beyond that. This is an example of that one guy, the pass rushing specialist that didn't work out. Had he just kind of cooled his jets and hung loose for a little bit, maybe he would have gotten a full-time gig out of this, but maybe it wasn't a good culture fit. I don't know. But at any rate, I think you'll see maybe 2 or 3 on each side of the ball get bumped up to some kind of, and they'll have some classification, these guys, let's say the current guys are assistant coaches and these guys who have been quality control and graduate assistants would be some type of new term that's just below, being an assistant coach or they're not going to pay them all $250,000, I wouldn't think right off the jump. But I just saw that one of the guys who was hired for OSU basketball is going to make $190,000. He was an administrative guy at Baylor, Coach Simons, and he's coming in. He's a quote full-time assistant, and he is making $190,000, whereas another guy that they just hired to be a quote full-time assistant who has a little bit more experience is going to make $445,000. So I think what you get paid and what your duties are all going to be commiserate with your experience and what your responsibilities are within this. But you look at the defensive coordinator Jim Knowles is not coaching a position. If he was, maybe he'd have a caddy or two to help him out. And the same thing with the quarterbacks coach, offensive coordinator Chip Kelly. I would think he's going to have, one of these people is going to be his, assistant quarterbacks coach, obviously, to kind of take some of the onus off of him being the offensive coordinator, I would think. Sounds like a perfect thing that Corey Dennis could have probably done, but, I digress.
And it'll still remain the same,
or maybe not. I don't know.
Well, the still you can only have 10 assistants on the road, so there's still the titles will kind of remain the same in terms of the assistant coaches. But it will be interesting to see if at some point does an assistant coach get removed from the road and one of the younger guys get put on the road because it's just it's sort of a transitional thing, or you would just rather have like James Laurinaitis on the road last year instead of Jim Knowles or something of that nature, where Laurinaitis couldn't go on the road last year. But is this a situation where now that everybody can be coaching, and this is another one of those things where a lot of this stuff was always going on, and now that the curtains have been pulled back, and now everybody gets to pretend that we never did it before, but now we're doing it. I think this is one of the things that Michigan was punished for. This most not the most recent NCAA thing, the thing that has them on probation. One of those things was coaching from a non-coaching position, and so now there's going to be no shortage. Ryan Day talked about this last week, I think, when we talked to him. It was just you can only have so many guys, and there are only going to be so many guys that want to come and do this when they'd rather be moving up or moving on. So you've got to find the right guys, but how many guys do you need and how many guys do you have the budget for will also be a concern.
Yeah, you look at a guy like Keenan Bailey, and he really paid his dues 5, 6, 7 years in that quality control thing before they finally made him the tight ends coach when Kevin Wilson left, and well deserved, certainly for him. And he's gonna tear it up. And it wouldn't surprise me if they give him something more to gnaw on here eventually, whatever it might be. But he's a guy with all the energy in the world, and does a bang up job with it. And we'll see what direction he continues to take it.
I apologize, folks. I should have put Yakov's comment in question into perspective there. If you're not aware, the NCAA loosened some restrictions on the number of countable coaches on everyone's coaching staffs moving forward. Jackson, appreciate you being here. Super chat. Jackson always lines us up with all sorts of facts and figures, the latest being 66 days until kickoff, that being from Dublin, Ireland, at Georgia Tech and Florida State, and some other group of 5 games that day.
Mark, are you like me? Do you start looking at how many times have you looked at your week 1, what I'm going to watch schedule? Like, cause I do that every few days or whatever. I'll be like, what was the week 1 going to be for me again? And, how early am I going to have to get to the stadium so that I can watch the first round of games and the press box? And, what time am I going to get home, and what games am I going to miss? Like, have you put your schedule down for like week 1 at this point of what you're going to be doing?
I am a bit fascinated by how many people ask me that or want to hear that out of me. But I always have a pecking order. Okay, at noon, the LSU Florida game I think is going to be the best game. Well, the best game's usually on Fox. The Penn State Purdue game or whatever, and then I've got my pecking order, but then I've got and I can only truly watch 2 games. Mm-hmm. I always have a third on, but I lose track. I don't know what's going on. Maybe the few times it lines up where I can go to the third game. But anyway, I can only truly watch 2. I've got a third, but then I've got, those ones waiting in the wings when game number 2 is 28-6 in the third quarter. Okay, we're moving away from that. And we replace it with this one. Absolutely. And then sometimes you get those hits of, none of these games are going too well. Coastal Carolina's down, 34-31 with 2 minutes left, and Troy's got the football. I'll switch over to ESPNU and catch the final drive of that.
Yeah. We also have the games where after we're done covering a game, whether on the road or at home, Steve will be like, "Hey, let's go watch. Let's go out to the parking lot and let's watch the last of this particular game on the laptop or
on Merck's laptop."
So I appreciate every opportunity we get to watch games because we miss so much covering them that, I still look forward to it. I love the fact that this is a 2 open week season. Those are my favorites. That's 2 weekends I get to stay home and just watch college football.
Yeah, I'm flipping through the Phil Steele right now. Somebody brought up the weekend of October the 12th is a crazy, crazy weekend. And it's like Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, USC, Washington, Iowa, Oklahoma, Texas, which I think they've already slated that for 3:30, which is a departure, I think, from what it has normally been. I think ABC is buying into the 3:30 SEC window. Ole Miss and LSU, that kind of reeks of 7 o'clock on ESPN. prime time, with McDonough or whoever. I'll tell you, he took a star turn on this Stanley Cup finals. And I just think he and Chris Spielman about a decade ago were as good as anybody can be on college football. They were so good about a decade ago on ESPN. They even got some Ohio State, Michigan games out of it a few times. And they were really good. So, but that one Big Ten weekend, October the 12th, I don't know what's going to happen there. Fox is kind of at a disadvantage because the two best games are both from the West Coast, and they can't really spend a noon pick on a West Coast game. So I wonder if they're going to have the third pick that weekend and get Washington, Iowa at noon, and then CBS or whoever, then we don't know. Is it NBC or CBS with the first pick? If it's NBC, if Ohio State and Oregon both make it through September undefeated and they're both in the top 5, that's got to be the 7:30 game, I would think. And that leaves CBS a pretty good 3:30 game with Penn State and USC. So that's kind of how I see that one playing out. But
yeah, it just depends on, does NBC own the week or does CBS own the week?
Yeah, you just don't know. I would think somebody at NBC used the brain and grabbed that one, but because that's the best game of the year other than Ohio State, Michigan, or maybe Ohio State, Penn State. So, which are proven commodities, obviously.
Yeah, and the sneaky one might be Kansas State at Colorado for Big Noon.
Yeah,
but we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see if Colorado is still in the picture at that point. There's no way.
I think Big 12 only gets 2 big noons all year.
Is that right?
Think they don't get many of them. I think it's contracted now, pretty much going to be all Big 10 except for a couple weeks. So, Big 12 is a second-class citizen now in all ways. Yeah, so there you are.
No, Brett Yormark, Steve, clarified this in the last couple of weeks. The college football landscape has never been more equal, never been better cooperation between the power conferences. Yeah, the cooperation is simply you do this, you do that, you're going to get your 19% and feel good about it. There you go. Or 16%.
The cooperation is 4 Big Ten teams, 4 SEC teams, and then whoever else in the playoff. That's the cooperation.
Yeah.
You better
you
learn to
get
live
your
with it.
32%, you get our 58%.
Yep.
All right. Tony, what's going on this week?
Just recorded a couple of Buckeye Weekly podcasts before this show, going over some of the predictions I've made for Ohio State this season and how bad or bold they are, and also did a listener questions episode, which I'll drop later today. And that's about it. Obviously, we'll always have stuff at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Continuing my work on the 50 for 50, just previewing the college football season through various ways and means. And we'll have some more stuff coming from Ryan Day from the press conference last week about everything he had to say. So check that out.
I need a Tony bone in my body about selecting topics and so forth. Every topic I think of, Tony, requires about 18 hours of research. I'm here every day thinking, I got to get a video out today. What am I going to talk? I need somebody to make a stupid comment that's just an easy video just to respond to somebody making a dumb comment. It takes no research, no thought, just put them in their place, and then those get the most views anyway.
Here's one for you, Mark. Why doesn't the national college football media talk more about the gigantic cheating scandal that Michigan just went through and is going through?
When we kind of grazed upon that a few minutes ago, I was thinking half of me just can't wait for that decision to come down, and the other half of me dreads that decision coming down. It's a little bit of both.
I'm just saying, if you want some engagement, there you go.
Yes,
positive, negative.
That's an obvious go-to right there.
I don't know what they're waiting on. It's like, plain as the nose on your face what they did. I don't know what's the holdup is, I don't know. It's weird.
Summer vacations.
We'll know when the letter gets sent to Michigan, we'll know. I mean, they'll be immediately in scramble mode. there'll be some weird things coming out of Ann Arbor the moment that letter gets transmitted to the president and the athletic director of, this is what we found, and this is what's probably about to happen to you. They're going to be tap dancing like nothing you've ever seen before.
If Michigan was simply a top 10 team last year, didn't make the playoffs, went and won the Citrus Bowl or whatever, how much different, meaning how much pressure is on whoever based on the circumstances of the season, that do we want to compromise our champion? Do we want to look bad? Do we want to make the sport look bad to illegitimize this championship?
Well, the precedent was set with Rick Pitino in Louisville years ago. They wiped away a national championship or whatever that was. So, and Final Fours have been wiped away. I mean, it's the precedent was set. There's no sacred cow. Either, you did it or you didn't do it. Well, they did it. I mean, it's pretty obvious they did it. And what's so amazing is they've held the thin blue line on this, that people on the sideline who are right there in the middle of it deny any knowledge of it. Jim Harbaugh didn't have any inclination. And again, I go back to this. He and Sharon Moore, this ain't their first freaking rodeo. They've both been coaching for decades, a decade or two, at least for Moore, and 3 or 4 for Harbaugh. You're telling me you put stock in what some video coordinator said that a pass or a run is coming, just on the idea he had a hunch, or he may have stolen a signal, without questioning, where'd you get that information? How did you know that? It never dawned on either of these guys to ask, how did you know that? Or delve behind the scenes, you knew that how? Or see the expenditures that were made or whatever, to obtain this information, however those, receipts were paid or whatever. Where there's smoke, there's fire, boys. I don't know what else to say. I mean,
I think there's certainly a reticence to remove if something were to come down. The CFP isn't going to want to remove this, and it's not an NCAA thing. It's not, it's a college football playoff trophy, an award. But also when they were asked, is Michigan eligible while this was all going on during the season, they're like, as long as the NCAA says they're eligible, they're going to be eligible. So what happens if the NCAA then says, we've taken these wins or whatever? And I don't know what the CFP is going to do. I don't know what the NCAA is going to do. So we'll see. And
I don't really even care. I just think that they need to be held accountable for what they did. They stole wins from people. They took food out of coaches' mouths, out of their families, denied kids, accomplishments, statistics, awards that they didn't earn. And I don't even know how else to put it.
Well, and I keep seeing people saying that the head coach didn't know, and there's no proof that he knew. Head coach doesn't have to know. The rule is that he should have known. And so that's something else that we've seen handed down before, that it doesn't matter if you can't prove that he did know. They've changed that to where you're supposed to know. And so if you didn't, that doesn't help.
Petiti held him accountable. That's why Petiti held him and him alone accountable in his late season sanctions.
Yeah, he's responsible. Absolutely. He's responsible regardless of his knowledge of it. But doesn't that situation for the two of you just become a much different situation than if it's just Connor Stalions acting on his own and maybe another assistant coach knew, versus maybe the initiative coming from Harbaugh, and regardless of whether it came from him, he agreed to it, he approved it, he said, let's keep this going? Aren't those two completely different situations to you?
You can't put stock in what Stalions' information was unless you understood how he obtained it and how foolproof it was, how he obtained it. His information was 100% spot on, or whatever his hit rate was, 85% spot on, because he used illegal means to obtain it. And, the wins are the fruit of the ill-gotten tree, or whatever they say in court. The apple is the it's poisonous fruit. It was an illegal search and seizure of opponents' signals, So they had not been Mirandized or whatever. So he walked into Western Michigan, Eastern Michigan, Central Michigan, whichever one of them schools, and sat on their sideline, and Michigan State hadn't been Mirandized. So, it ain't right.
We watch a lot of Law and Order. We know what we're talking about.
Oh my, it should be something else. Steve, you got anything for us before you walk out the door?
Hey, just have a great week and safe weekend. We got a big holiday. Can you believe next week, the 4th of July is on a Thursday, and the big celebration here in Columbus is next Wednesday, Red, White, and Boom, the big fireworks. I heard them talking about it on the radio. They'll have 500,000 people downtown Columbus next Wednesday for the Red, White, and Boom fireworks. And, it's time to celebrate our country and, the birthday of our country. And, Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, and some people will still be partying on Sunday. It's like a 5-day weekend next week, and I'm here for it. So let's do it.
Awesome.
I hope the fireworks are done by day 4. Honestly, I'm just,
Yeah,
enough.
You hear them in your neighborhood. You're like, oh, they're just still doing it, and they're doing it at 11:30 at night, and the dogs are barking. And enough.
Yeah, the dogs hate it. Most of them. Absolutely. For Steve, for Tony, and again, BuckeyeHuddle.com, Buckeye Weekly with Tony, 247 Sports, Bucknuts.com with Steve, and we'll be back here next week, everyone. Have a great week and a great holiday.